Have you ever thought, is this just me when struggling to stay organized, start tasks, or manage time? For those of us over 50, these challenges might not be just aging. They could be ADHD hiding in plain sight for decades. I'm Jami Shapiro, host of Grandma Has ADHD, and I'm building a community where your experiences matter. Whether you're diagnosed, questioning, or simply curious, you're not alone. Our Facebook group is filled with vibrant, understanding people over 50 who share their stories, strategies, and yes, even their struggles, with plenty of laughter along the way. Ready to find your people? Join our growing Grandma Has ADHD Facebook community. Please like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen and share it with someone who might need to hear they're not alone, because ADHD doesn't have an age limit and neither does understanding yourself better. Together, we're changing the conversation about ADHD after 50. Come be part of the story. Are you tired of feeling like you can't get it together? Struggling with clutter that overwhelms you despite your best efforts? Wondering why organization feels impossible while others make it look so easy? You're not alone, and it's not your fault. Hi, I'm Jami Shapiro, host of the Grandma Has ADHD podcast, and I understand exactly what you're going through. I combine my years of hands-on work as founder of Silver Linings Transitions, a move management and home organizing company, together with ADHD coach training, and help adults 50 and over connect the dots between ADHD and lifelong struggles. Whether you're downsizing, decluttering, or simply trying to create systems that work for your ADHD brain, I provide virtual and in-person coaching for those in the San Diego area. Together, we'll develop practical strategies that honor how your brain actually works, not how you think it should work. Ready to trade shame for understanding? Visit grandmahasadhd.com or call to schedule a discovery session at 760-607-7377, because it's never too late to finally make sense of your story. Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of Grandma Has ADHD. I always love when I have a guest on who I have absolutely no knowledge of, because then you get to hear a real spontaneous conversation just as it would take place. What I can share is Alice's bio. So I'm going to do that, and then we're going to get right into the conversation. Alice Reiter Feld is a board-certified elder law attorney by the American Bar Association and the Certified Elder Law Foundation. She is also a certified family mediator with specific training in elder mediation and is a certified professional ADHD coach. She is AV rated by Martindale-Hubbell, the former mayor of Lauderhill in Broward County, Florida, and former president of the Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. Alice is licensed to practice in Florida and formerly also in New York. After earning her bachelor's degree in political science from Brooklyn College and graduating with honors, Ms. Reiter Feld went on to earn a Juris Doctorate from St. John's University School of Law in 1980 in Jamaica, New York. Alice, your bio reads like someone with ADHD. Do you have ADHD?
I certainly do, yes.
I love that. Thank you so much. And what I really love about having you is that not only do you have ADHD, I suspect that you're over 50, which is my demographic, and you also have experience in elder law. I want to touch on all of that. So first of all, give me your ADHD story. How did you discover that you had ADHD?
I was in my probably late 40s or early 50s. I'm not sure, coincidentally, my son had just been diagnosed with it, so that's sort of was part of it. But I started to notice that my memory wasn't good. And when you deal with seniors all the time, you get really nervous that maybe you have something. So I went to some neurologists and all that, and I was on boards with these people. They just laughed at me when I told them I was getting evaluated. And unfortunately, they didn't come up with anything helpful. They didn't tell me I had ADHD. They told me I might have mild cognitive impairment, which is not the thing you want to hear when you're 49 or 50.
Absolutely not.
And I lived with that for a while, but I knew it wasn't mild cognitive impairment because I deal with people all the time. And it wasn't progressing, or it just didn't feel like it. So I was just talking to my son one day about the symptoms, and he said, "Well, those are my symptoms." So, I mean,
Mm.
this was 5 years after I wasn't initially diagnosed.
Hmm.
So I started to do my homework, started to Google, started to do my research, and I found out that I was not alone, that there were a lot of women who had it, that you have generally considered to have it your whole life. But until I hit my late 40s or early 50s, it really wasn't a big problem. And even though my son had it, he'd only had it for a year, and I didn't know that much about it. And to me, it was attention deficit. So
Hmm.
the fact that I was having issues with memory or disorganization or that, I didn't put the two together for many, many years.
Right. Well, you are actually very common for women over 50 who realize that they have it. There are two big times that women tend to be diagnosed. One is during perimenopause because estrogen is pro cognitive. And as we are losing our estrogen, those symptoms are becoming more pronounced. And we also discover, as I did when my oldest child was diagnosed, and then I discovered that it was highly heritable. So your experience is very common. Can you now look at your childhood and see, oh, yeah, this was something? Because that's one of the ways that we look at ADHD versus age relating cognitive impairment, which is how was I at 40? Not how am I now, but what was I like looking back?
I think also they use that as hugely in diagnosing. My psychiatrist probably would not have diagnosed me if he didn't see signs of it when I was a kid. So, and most people subscribe to that. Some people say you can get it later, but whether you can or you can't, most people have had symptoms since they're children.
Yeah.
Just didn't realize what it was. And so I was loquacious, talkative as a kid. That's little girls are talkative. And I was smart enough to be able to get away with it not being a big problem. And even in law school, people say, "How did you go to law school?" You adapt and you make adjustments and you do things that over years you don't even realize you're doing that are good for people with ADHD. So it was good getting diagnosed. I'm glad I got diagnosed. And yes, having as a child, definitely. I mean, my mother said I couldn't sit still. She used the Yiddish expression for it. But yes, if I said that to the psychiatrist that I couldn't sit still, he said, "Oh, that was it."
Was the term agita?
It was, you can't keep your butt in the sitting.
Oh, well, you'll have to tell
Uh,
me that one again. I haven't heard of that one, but my mother took me to the doctor and she said that I was hyperkinetic. And the doctor told her that I wasn't hyperkinetic. I just had a nervous mother. Well, P.S., I have combined type ADHD and it was never caught. And I think that's the reason that I named the podcast Grandma. My father and mother both have ADHD. With my father, it was very obvious. You could see it in his baby videos. He was constantly moving. My mother could sit still, but had the inattentive. And so she was the person that couldn't finish projects. And what I noticed about ADHD is there's someone like you who's a super achiever. You just keep going, going, going. And it's almost like you're driven by a motor, right? And you want to accomplish. And then you have the other side where they just can't seem to find that thing that interests them to turn on that hyper focus.
and the going, going, going was great until I hit 50. And then I hit the brick wall. So, yeah, I was definitely busy as a child, but I was smart enough. I think I remember doing my homework in school while the teacher was teaching.
Oh,
So I
me
did
too.
home and do homework. I have the sign up here on the hair for you. It says, "We said, who knew gifted and talented who knew gifted and talented men will struggle with mental health for 20 years till someone realizes they're neurodiverse."
Do you know what's so funny? My oldest is gifted, and I used to say it's no gift. It's good.
Until it doesn't do it anymore. And that's what
Right.
like this.
Right. And that's
Programming.
And that's a good point. When we're really bright, we do compensate. I've noticed that too with some of the clients that I work with who have dementia, the ones who are really bright, they can hide it really well for a while, the way that they converse. But I want to bring up the elder law component too, especially the mediation part. And I'm going to throw one at you because, again, this is a fresh conversation. We've never spoken before. But one of the things that I have noticed is that a lot of times people with ADHD have rejection sensitivity. And sometimes we'll make mountains out of molehills, or we'll see a problem that isn't there. And even within my own family, we have some estrangement. And I wonder what you think about whether or not ADHD, that does run so big into families, might be at play at some of that.
Absolutely. I absolutely have RSD. I've worked really hard at recognizing it and trying to count 10, 20, and 50 sometimes. And I definitely am somebody you would say is oversensitive. We used to call when they were little girls and you're too sensitive or whatever. Definitely. In fact, RSD is the one thing that really distinguishes ADHD from all of the other dementias. Not that it's a dementia, but if you don't have the RSD, it's in some way, it's probably not the ADHD, it's probably some other thing that's getting you in trouble mentally. I definitely have RSD. No question.
So I know that in my coaching class, we've been encouraged not to call it disorder or dysphoria. So I'm just referring to it as rejection sensitivity. But for those of you who've heard RSD and you haven't heard this podcast before, which shame on you, but RSD stands for rejection sensitive dysphoria, which means that we tend to magnify rejection. When you have ADHD, you tend to ruminate and you will catastrophize or make something bigger than it is. And that's why I actually wanted to talk to you about elder mediation, because I know a lot of times there's a lot of discourse in families. And I'm wondering, like I said, how much of that could be related to that rejection sensitivity.
I'm sure some of it is. By the time you get families to a point where they're mediating, there's so much baggage that has gone on. If you think divorces are ugly, families that have been competing since they were one and got the
Yep.
wrong size ice cream cone will really kill each other.
Oh,
So yeah, I'm sure that some of it. Pick out people all the time who I believe have ADHD when I'm watching on TV. Who was the one? Their memory. Yep, Will Smith. When he
oh
was
yeah.
at
He's
the Oscars, as soon as that happened, well, I had just come home. I had just turned the TV on and I just saw it as it was happening. Literally that minute. As soon as it happened, I started to Google, does Will Smith have ADHD? Sure. Impulsivity, I said,
Yep.
that just doesn't, and sure, something hit him about his wife and he just, or
Right.
whatever.
So back to family dynamics. So my aunt passed away. She had 4 children. She had not put things in order the way that they should have been put. It was her, she died unexpectedly. And when her children were going through her belongings, the police had to be called because they were fighting so much. And I think about my aunt's legacy, and that is definitely not what she would have wanted. And P.S., my 4 cousins, 2 and 2, never spoke again, and 2 have since passed. So I think it's really, really important that we settle those issues with our family members while we are alive and we can address those issues head on. I'm sure you see, like, just to your point, what you said is that sibling rivalries existed since biblical days. So I'm certain that it goes out when grief and all the other things are at play.
At that point, everybody's money equals love. If you want to get into all the psychology of it, my father would leave me out of the will. It's about the money, but sometimes it's not about the money. And there's huge rivalry in families, and it can be very divisive. And one of the things you do as the attorney part of it is you want to plan and prepare so that you leave as little up to everybody's decision making as possible. So you don't like somebody say, "Well, just let my daughter hand out everything to the other people." No, right? Give me a list of which fork goes to which person. I don't want anybody choosing. Let me know, because the less they have to decide, the better.
Yeah, I have heard that it's actually even better to have the conversation about your will with your family so that they know okay, good.
I've written an article called Having the Conversation.
Nice. I love it. Well, we may need to have you. I'm also a certified senior advisor, so really touching on all the issues that seniors face. Well, I want to go back to the ADHD conversation because we like to jump around like squirrels. And, if there's anything that I didn't cover in terms of mediation or something that you want to share with our listeners, I definitely want to make sure we get back to that. So I am going to ask you one question, but I don't want you to answer it because we're going to take a pause and we're going to have everybody stay tuned so they can hear it. Okay. Are you ready? This is the question I've been asking everybody on my latest podcast. If you could press a button and you could not have ADHD, would you press that button? Don't answer me. We're going to take a break and come back and answer that question. Ever wondered why helping a loved one declutter feels like speaking different languages? I did, especially with my mom. It wasn't until I founded Silver Linings Transitions, helping San Diego seniors organize and move for over a decade, that I discovered why. We all experience clutter differently, and for those of us with ADHD, it's a whole other world. If you are listening in the San Diego area and feeling stuck with moving, paperwork, photos, or home organization, Our team at Silver Linings Transitions gets it. We understand ADHD's unique challenges, and we won't just help you get organized, we'll create sustainable systems that finally stick. Schedule a consultation with our team today at 760-522-1624. That's 760-522-1624, or find us at silverliningstransitions.com. We are back with Alice Reiter Feld. And as I've shared, she is really a unique guest in that she is someone 50 or over with ADHD, and she works with seniors as an elder mediator and a divorce coach. So, okay, I asked you before we took the pause if you would press that turn off my ADHD button. What's your answer?
I probably would turn it off, but it's not an easy answer. I would. I know most people say they wouldn't. I would.
Okay.
The struggles of my later years. Maybe when I was 40, I probably would have said no, or 50 even. But it's been a big struggle the last 20 years, and I probably would turn it off every day. Every day is a struggle, just moving and activating, motivation, activation, all of that. So I probably would. On the other hand, I know there are things I have, like my creativity and all of that is definitely from ADHD. I would miss those things. So, but you know what? We can't change who we are. We are who we are. So I have to live with it. And in coaching, which I haven't done all that much yet, but in coaching, you want people to accept who they are and embrace it and learn to live with it, so they don't sit there doing what I just did, which is I wish I didn't have, because that doesn't really accomplish anything.
Right. I mean, the thing that we have, like, we are who we are, and we really have to accept it. Otherwise, there's going to be this spiral of shame and self hate. And I would be happy, not on this episode, but to do some coaching with you to explore that. But I really appreciate that you were honest about it, because to your point, most people would say they wouldn't turn it off. Most people would say they would have turned it off in school when we were forced to sit still in a seat and learn things we didn't want to learn. But I have found for me that ability to hyperfocus, and again, the creativity is something that I wouldn't trade. But okay, so what would you tell somebody? Because then this is great, because you just said, hey, I would turn it off. What would you tell somebody who is just coming to the ADHD conversation? And a lot of people, when they get there's a mixture of grief and relief. The grief of, I wish I had known this sooner. What would my life, like my mom, who is really bright and did not finish college, I am certain if she had been on the right medication or had the right tools, she would have finished. I mean, speaking of gifted, she's really bright. And then there's also this relief, like, that makes sense. Why, like, for me, why can I never be organized? Like, I just can't get it together. So for me, I've stopped beating myself up over it. I've accepted, hey, this is not my area of strength, but this is what I'm good at. And I just really refocus. And definitely there are things that I would change for sure. So what would you say to somebody?
All of us would.
Yeah.
Even neurotypicals, we all have things we did that we would regret. But I think that I wouldn't change all that many things. I would just want to be much more educated than I was, so that I knew that attention deficit hyperactivity disorder didn't have all that much to do with attention deficit or hyperactivity. That it's executive function, that it's getting motivated, that it's RSD, that it's forgetting. I didn't know that. Even when my son was diagnosed, he was diagnosed at school. People think of it as the school disease. When I grew up, there was no ADHD. You were stupid if you had. I'm sure those people would believe it's stupid. I'm sure my father would have been a very different person if he'd been diagnosed, but he was
Sure.
well.
They called it,
Certainly he wasn't going to be.
right. They called it minimal brain dysfunction or minimal brain function, like back in the day. So it existed. We just didn't have a label for it. And
Totally convinced my father.
yeah, for sure. I'm pretty sure my grandfather had it as well, looking back on his history. So what would you tell somebody who is, like I said, coming to that conversation and realizing, hey, I really have had it? You just say, learn more about it. I mean, what would your advice be?
Absolutely. First of all, I would want them to know, kind of map out, and I'm not one to take lots of notes or journal all those things, but to map out where the issues are, so they can learn to deal with those things, as opposed to think they should be better at something and they're not going to be, because they've spent 10, 20, 30, 50 years trying to be different than they are. I would tell them to embrace it and learn as much as they can because knowledge is power.
Mhm.
And the more I've known, the more I'm able to adjust my life. People will tell me the silliest things to people with ADHD. And why don't you just hang your keys up on the hook when you come in? Well, duh. If I could do that, I would. But when I look in, I'm a squirrel. So 14 things are going to take my attention. And here's the tether that's on my phone. So I can find it. Shit,
Sure.
watch so I can find it. So you have to embrace it. You have to find the things that are going to work to make your life easier and not fight it all the time. And I still fight it. So I'm sure many others do.
So I'm going to give you some tips that I like to share when I do my presentations. And so one of them is that I do now wear the watch. I used to think that it would distract me, but I have definitely left those boiling eggs on the stove. And now I know that I will leave. So now I absolutely set myself up for success and I plan to forget. So that's one of the things that I do. Even when I park my car, I have to be in my body. I have to pause. Okay. Because usually I'm just doing something else and I have to say, okay, either take a picture of where I am. And the other thing that I noticed, and this is actually something my boyfriend pointed out to me, was so right on. I'm always like running on a motor and I'm so fast. And sometimes I want to do something so quickly to save time that I actually cause myself more time. Here's an example. I was putting something into my trunk and I had an open drink. And I would have set the drink in the trunk because it was the easiest place to put it. And then I would have ended up having a spill when I inevitably knocked it over. So now I realize I'm going to set myself up for success. I'm going to put it down and I'm actually making myself think a couple steps ahead. And that has been another huge tool that I've started. And I wouldn't have known any of these things until I realized that I had ADHD. And I was diagnosed, by the way, at 45 when my oldest child was diagnosed. And then I also like to set myself up for future Jami. And so I do a lot of presentations and I find mornings. And by the way, knowing what time is best for you is definitely helpful in accomplishing things and knowing, hey, I have a high energy level time and I have a low energy level time. So I'm not going to plan something in my low energy level time, or I'm going to leave things that I really enjoy for my low level time, but also just to set myself up for success. So I will literally pack my car up the night before so that everything is in my car and I don't have to think about it the next morning. I'm setting myself up for future Jami. And even I would like make an appointment or like say I'd sign up for a potluck. And I'd think, of course, I'm going to remember the thing that I signed up for. I never did. So now I always put the notes in the calendar and I always put the links in the calendar. And it has really, really helped me. I was really struggling also going through perimenopause. I saw a decline in my own brain function, and really those tools have helped me.
Yeah, everything is on my phone and in my computer because people say, well, right, that I'm old. So I used to use paper and pen all the time. But once I got away from it, because I was working with other people and working in offices, now I love having everything on my phone or on the computer because I'm not going to lose it.
That's true. But I will say,
It's a Google Doc, it's there. And when I
yeah.
try to write it down, I can't find the pen, I can't find the paper. That's both sale, and I can't use paper anymore.
Oh, see, I'm still loving the to-do list. I still love checking
And
things off.
it's just on my phone.
Okay. Well, that's good. Also, one of the things that I learned in ADHD coaching is sometimes we need to start with the thing that we're excited about just to kind of gain that momentum. So,
To get the dopamine going.
exactly, having that dopamine menu. Okay, so before we end our call, like I said, you are really unique in that you are bringing both the ADHD experience and you're touching on some issues that seniors are going to face with elder law. First of all, how can people find you? Who do you work with? So make sure that we're putting that in there. And then maybe some takeaway tips that you can share with our listeners.
My tips sort of a big one is one you just said. It's knowing that you have limited executive function, that you have limited concentration time, and which times of the day do you need to do what you need to do to get things done. So I know that I take meds, so I know the first hours after I take my meds are the time I need to do the things I really need to concentrate. And so that's what I tell people. I tell them to use every reminder and tool that works for them to keep nothing in their head. And this is a rule for everybody, but everything needs to be, if you're a writer, you want to write it down. Otherwise, I have an app I use. If you tell me something now, you say, why don't we talk to me next Wednesday? It's going to go immediately into this thing out. I'm not going to say anything. I'll just put it in, and then later I'll move it where it needs to move. Nothing stays in my head. If it stays in my head, it's gone.
Okay, well, thank you. What about your advice as an elder law mediator or family elder attorney? Any advice for families, for your clients, for anybody?
It's always been have the conversation, as we talked about before, plan ahead, leave very little up to your family. The more you take control of your own future as a senior citizen, the less you leave up to the children to make the decision for you, the better off you're going to be as the senior citizen, and the better off the family is going to be, because you do not want to give them any reason to fight. They do not need your help. They can do it fine on their own. So you want to
Right.
get no extra things that they can fight about. So you want to make a list of what you want people to get. You make sure that your accounts are titled the way you want them titled. You really have to go over everything and not say, my daughter will do this, my son will do that. That may be, but we're not going to leave it up to any of that. And things happen. Sometimes the daughter or the son dies before you. You never know what order things can happen. So planning and preparing, always my two big words when I was done.
So
And
I'm going to,
keeps the stress down for families.
sure. I'm going to give you one of my takeaways that I do as a senior move manager. And I do a lot of presentations on going through the downsizing or right sizing process. So have you heard of the Swedish death cleaning before, Alice?
Half, but I don't.
Okay, so I'll tell you what it is and I'll give you a little spin on it. And we'll put a show note link into the podcast. But Swedish death cleaning is basically proactively going through your home as if you had passed, so that your loved ones are not tasked with the process while they are grieving of having to make the decisions about your stuff. And to give you an example of why you want to do that, the example with my aunt and my cousins who fought over things, but my grandmother passed away unexpectedly. And my mother was very, very close with my grandmother, and my mother was not prepared to let go of anything. She was grieving. And so she took everything into her home and then ended up having what I call grief hoarding. And I say you don't want to leave that for your children, because there's going to be so much, or your family, there's so much emotion when someone dies, also having to go through all of their things. And I did ask my mom, hey, will you do me the favor of letting me know what's important, what's of value? Because I live in California. My mom lives in Florida. I'm her only child. I'm not going to be able to take everything from her apartment, but I'm going to leave you with a funny thing that you will not find on the internet. It's my personal ADHD flair to Swedish death cleaning. And that is, I call it a tequila box. So there are people who have letters or things that they may not want found. Would you agree that there are people who have things that they would put in a box that says, do not open, right? And would you agree that there are probably going to be family members who are going to disregard the note that says, do not open, and open it anyway?
Well, I would probably tell them to open it, because I don't know what's in there.
Well, so
While you're alive is one thing. Do not open it after you die. If you didn't want it open while you were alive, then you should have destroyed it. But otherwise, how do I know there are young bonds in there? I'm a lawyer. I don't know what's in there. Somebody has to open it.
So this is why I call it a tequila box. I assume that people are going to open it. So I say, wrap a bottle of tequila in that box and say, I did ask you not to open this, but I hope you will have some fun. So that's my take. I'm also a cancer
I
survivor.
have two more tips there. So I was looking
Okay.
at the tips. So on your watch, on your Apple Watch or anywhere, I count my steps every day. And I no longer get annoyed when I go from room to room 17 times because I forget what I'm going in there for. I forget to get something, whatever. Now it's just a way of getting extra steps.
I love it.
Returning your negatives into positives are good things. And one other I had here, clear bags, putting everything into something that's clear, not putting anything in and trying to remember, even in your makeup bag when you travel, clear or almost clear. Everything, when I go places, I have a lot of plastic tote bags, the ones that you go to stadiums with, because I will forget what's there. And if you don't know what's in your cabinets, open the cabinets and leave them open for a couple of days so your brain remembers what you're looking at, and then close them.
That's great.
Or put lists inside each of the, because I have very high cabinets. I can't see what's up on the top. If I either don't have a list of what's in there on the door, or I can't see it, I'm not going to. So we try not to buy something 20 times. We end up doing it, but less than we used to.
That's a great point, actually. And that's something I don't think I've brought up on the podcast, is that a lot of us are very much out of sight, out of mind. So if we don't see something And you actually said something about finding the positive. So I named my company Silver Linings Transitions because I had cancer 20 years ago and I altered my career. And the positive that came out of it was reevaluating my life. But it was really interesting when I was preparing a presentation about ADHD and I was like, what are the good things? The article that it linked to was the silver linings of ADHD. Like that was what I found on like PubMed. And one of the things that I do love about ADHD is that we are so resilient. So we may get knocked down, but we typically get up.
Always.
Yeah. So that's a pretty awesome trait.
It's an awesome trait. Just as you asked me before, I just wish I didn't have to get knocked down and stand up.
Sure. Yeah.
But no, I don't think I would. That's a very trait. I say yes, and I'm not sure I would. I can't. So it's an exercise. It's not going to get me anywhere. I always knew I was different. I didn't know why. People asked me how I got through law school. I didn't know I was studying doubling for 3 years. I just knew I was studying with a friend.
There's a great expression, what you resist persists. So
Right.
to your point,
Concentrate on happens. So what you put your energy on, it happens. So if you concentrate on doing something, it'll happen. But it requires more. It requires you to be, as you said, planning, knowing your future person, planning ahead and knowing where you're going with something so that you get to where you want to go and you don't think you're neurotypical and then you're shocked when it doesn't work out.
I'm going to leave you with one thing that that I share pretty frequently. I'm sure you've heard the expression of Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire that she did all of the dancing that he did, only she did it backwards in heels. And that's sort of how I feel about ADHD. Like we've cobbled it together. So we should feel proud because we did have, our brains were not made for the modern society. We were meant to be hunters. We were meant to be always alert. And so we have had to really modify how we live and who we are to adjust to this world. And so I say we should feel proud and because we can't change it. So all we can do is
Can't change it. So we need to embrace it. Learn more about ourselves, learn more about ADHD. And the more you learn, as I said, knowledge is power. The more you know about yourself and what you have, the more that will make sense to you.
Yeah. So any parting words or anything you want to leave our guests with, how can they find you? What kind of work do you do?
I can be emailed at Alice, TMRF, ALICETMRF @gmail.com. I have a new site that's going up for the mediation called Gray Matters Mediation. I think it's up, so somebody can Google that to look at it. Or they can call me 954-646-0278 or text me.
So Gray Matters, is it GRAY or GAR?
GRAY Matters Mediation.
Okay, I love it.
Everything older people mediation, older divorce, elder mediation, guardianship, probate, all of it.
Wonderful. Well, you have really been an informative guest, and I'm really glad we had that authentic conversation because to your point, it isn't sunshine and rainbows all the time. And there is a label of toxic positivity that goes with ADHD and calling it a superpower, but really we need to acknowledge that it is not the case for everybody.
But nonetheless, if we have to embrace who we are because we have no choice. So that's
Good.
why learning about yourself and learning about things is so important. People around you. So I can always pick.
Community is everything. I will say that when I am in my ADHD coaching and everybody is like me and you just feel accepted, there's nothing better than not having to explain yourself. Speaking of community, what a great segue. I just want to invite you to share this podcast, subscribe to it. Let me know what you think of it, only if it's positive, because I don't like rejection. And I am building a community, Grandma Has ADHD. It's on Facebook because people 50 and over, that seems to be our social media platform of choice. And I can't manage too much. I know exactly who I am. But I hope that you will find me and join a community. And I've got big visions for how much support we can offer to each other. So thank you so much, Alice Reiter Feld. And thank you to everyone who tuned in to the latest edition of Grandma Has ADHD.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
The opinions expressed on Grandma Has ADHD podcast are those of our guests and hosts and are intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. This podcast does not provide medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content discussed in this episode is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, mental health professional, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental health concern. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The host, guests, and producers of Grandma Has ADHD do not assume any liability for the content of this podcast. Listen at your own discretion.